Before we ever see a monster, fear has already arrived. Real fear doesn't crash through doors or scream for attention. It creeps in quietly. It settles into your chest. It makes you feel watched even when you're alone. It lingers in the quiet corners of your mind, whispering possibilities you never considered. That's why the most powerful horror movie monsters stay with us long after the movie ends. They don't just threaten our bodies, they threaten our sense of safety. They challenge what we believe keeps us alive, forcing us to confront the unknown and the uncontrollable. These creatures aren't terrifying because they exist. They're terrifying because they expose something fundamental about us, about the fragility of human existence. Let's begin with the Death Angels from A Quiet Place. When the Death Angels arrive, the world doesn't burn. It goes silent. They are blind, nearly indestructible, and impossibly fast. They hunt by sound alone. A footstep, a whisper, a cry. Instant death. What makes the Death Angels horrifying is not just their lethality, but what they take away. Communication, comfort, even the ability to express love or fear safely. Every conversation, every laugh, every small noise becomes a potential death sentence. Parents cannot soothe crying children. People cannot call for help. Even grief must be silent. The Death Angels force humanity into isolation, where survival demands suppressing emotion. They remind us that without communication, we slowly lose what makes us human. Each quiet moment becomes a test of endurance, a gamble between living and speaking. The silence becomes a suffocating presence that constantly reminds you of what is at stake. Now imagine a monster that doesn't care whether you make noise at all. The Xenomorph. The Xenomorph is horror distilled into biology. Every inch of its body exists to dominate, reproduce, and erase. Its design is perfect in its efficiency, terrifying in its precision. Its life cycle is a nightmare. It invades a host, grows inside, then bursts outward violently, leaving destruction behind. The Xenomorph doesn't feel hate or anger. It doesn't torture. It doesn't need motivation. It breeds. Humans are not enemies. They are resources. That is the true terror. No morality applies. No strategy works. The Xenomorph represents the fear that intelligence doesn't guarantee survival, that we may not be special at all, just another species waiting to be erased. It is nature without conscience, perfectly adapted, unstoppable, and unconcerned with human arrogance. Now let's talk about a monster that hides in plain sight. The Thing. The Thing doesn't hunt with claws or teeth. It hunts with imitation. It can perfectly copy any living organism. Your face, your voice, your memories. You cannot know who it is. And worse, you cannot know who it isn't. The true horror of the Thing isn't its body, it's the paranoia it spreads. Trust collapses. Friendship becomes dangerous. Every conversation feels like a test. Every glance could hide betrayal. Fear spreads faster than the monster ever could. Isolation grows, suspicion festers, and simple acts become potential threats. The Thing represents the terror of uncertainty, the fear that familiarity is an illusion, that the people closest to you may already be gone. It teaches that even human bonds can be weaponized against us, that the mind itself can turn stranger than any monster. Now imagine a monster that never stops moving. The entity from it follows. The entity is terrifying because it is inevitable. It doesn't run, it doesn't hide, it walks, always toward you. The entity can look like anyone. A stranger, a neighbor, someone you recognize but shouldn't, someone from your past who could betray your trust. You cannot kill it. You cannot escape it. You can only delay it by passing the curse. And that is the cruelty of the entity. It represents consequences that cannot be undone. Trauma that never fully fades. The slow, patient certainty of mortality. It moves at its own pace, waiting for weakness, exploiting hesitation, reminding us that time itself can be a weapon against us. No matter where you go, the entity follows, relentless, patient, constant, the inevitability of death wrapped in form, walking, waiting, unstoppable. Now let's enter the world of dreams. Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger doesn't just kill his victims, he invades their minds. Burned alive and reborn through hatred, Freddy Krueger becomes a predator of sleep. Dreams are no longer safe havens. They are battlegrounds where your own subconscious is weaponized. Dreams are where defenses vanish. Logic fails. Fear takes control. Every night becomes a battlefield where the rules are rewritten. The longer you try to stay awake, the weaker you become, and Freddy Krueger waits for that moment. What makes Freddy Krueger terrifying is his cruelty. He mocks, he toys, he enjoys fear itself. He represents unresolved trauma, the past that refuses to stay buried, and the mind that can betray you. Sleep is no longer safe. Rest is a trap. Every attempt at peace becomes a battleground for survival. Now let's talk about a hunter who chooses its prey. Predator. Predators are not reckless. It is patient, disciplined, strategic. It travels across galaxies not to survive, but to hunt, to test itself against worthy opponents. Predator studies, observe, measures, tests strength. It does not kill the weak. It hunts the strong. That's what makes Predator terrifying. You aren't attacked because you're helpless. You're attacked because you're capable. Predator represents the fear of being judged, of standing out, of being hunted because you are interesting enough to kill. Strength becomes a liability. Skill becomes a target. Every action, every success could make you a mark. Now let's talk about a monster who is disturbingly human. The Mother from Barbarian. The Mother isn't evil. She is damage-made flesh. She is the product of decades of abuse, isolation, and neglect. Hidden beneath a normal neighborhood, forgotten by the world above, her presence is a reminder that horrors can exist behind ordinary walls. The Mother doesn't understand society. She doesn't understand boundaries. She only understands one instinct: protect, care, hold on. Her violence comes from desperation, not hatred, and that makes her deeply unsettling. The Mother represents what happens when trauma is buried instead of healed, when suffering is ignored long enough to become monstrous. She proves monsters aren't always born. Sometimes they are created. Now imagine evil in its smallest form. Chucky. A doll should be safe, comforting, harmless. Chucky turns that expectation into a weapon. Possessed by a serial killer's soul, Chucky hides behind innocence. A child's toy, a smiling face. People underestimate him. They laugh until it's too late. Chucky represents the fear that evil doesn't always look threatening. That harm can hide in what we trust most. That size means nothing. Even the familiar can be deadly. And finally, Pennywise. Pennywise isn't just a clown. It is an ancient entity that feeds on fear, especially the fear of children. Pennywise studies, learn, becomes the embodiment of your deepest terrors. To one child, Pennywise is a monster. To another, a memory they tried to forget. It doesn't just scare, it manipulates. It dominates psychologically. Pennywise represents childhood trauma, the fears we bury, the pain we pretend never happened. It reminds us that some horrors do not disappear with age. They wait, they watch, they strike when we are weakest. And that is why these monsters endure. They do not exist merely on screen. They exist inside us, reflecting our fears, our doubts, our vulnerabilities. So when the lights go out tonight, and the silence feels heavier than usual, ask yourself one question: what terrifies you more? The monster in the dark, or the fear it awakens within you? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.